Good morning, I'm Melissa Meeks and I'm going to debrief the peer learning activity in 3 parts. These videos are designed to model how you can use a review to coach writers in revision and to coach reviewers in giving helpful feedback. In the third video, I'll help you understand what I've been doing behind the scenes to coordinate the activity. Let's start by remembering how Eli works. You completed a small bit of writing on Monday, you gave feedback on Tuesday and Wednesday, and today we're focusing on processing and debriefing feedback. Today and tomorrow, you'll build a revision plan and then revise. In a course, we could repeat these steps, building from where we ended or starting a new project. I want to put the emphasis on processing and debriefing feedback because, as Dylan Williams explains in his article, The Secret of Effective Feedback from ASCD, the only important thing about feedback is what students do with it. In debriefing, our goal is to inspire revision, to see your draft differently because of the criteria of the assignment and what you see in others' drafts. In this section of debriefing, I'm going to focus on how to coach writers in revision, and I'm going to give you 3 strategies for inspiring writers to change their drafts. The first strategy for inspiring revision is the review task itself. The writing task was simply to compose a syllabus blurb or talking points, and it had no criteria about length or about other content because participants in this course are diverse. In the review, I wanted to document the different ways people might approach the pitch for peer learning to students and to give us a sense of what's possible. Most reviews are built around criteria announced in a writing task, but this review had very few criteria, so this one is built around options. The first set of options acknowledges the purposes that we might use when we explain peer review to students. The second set covers the pedagogical principles in the readings. Because we're interested in peer learning pedagogy, we wanted to see which of these ideas are bubbling up in the ways that you're describing peer learning to your students. The third set comes from my experience working with several groups over this past year who found that students have many negative experiences with peer learning. Getting students to a more positive place with higher expectations of peer learning takes intentional conversation. So this list is about figuring out what negative ideas you're confronting. The rating scale is designed to identify which drafts groups think should be discussed in the whole class. So I'll do that in a second. The final part of the review task reinforced describe, evaluate, suggest, and provided a model which is designed to nudge reviewers in giving great feedback aligned to the criteria above. In short, the review task is a map for revision. It describes the landscape of possibilities for writers to revise. This particular review is not prescriptive. It doesn't say that writers must do X, Y, or Z to achieve a goal, though that's a good strategy for designing reviews. This review is designed to be informative and generative. It's about laying out options. The second strategy of inspiring revision relies on the zone of proximal development. Before we work through the data together, remember this image from the videos you watched on Monday? This is a little dancer who looks to the side and sees another little dancer doing the right move. So she's going to make an adjustment. And Eli, looking to your right and looking to your left and then making a slight adjustment happens when you see your own feedback. So let's go into the interface, and I'm showing you here the teacher view of the data that itemizes how reviewers responded to the review task. But you also get on your side an individualized report that shows you what reviewers think about your draft. Let me contextualize these numbers for you a bit. In these trait ID checklists, where reviewers are saying, yes, I see that feature, or no, I don't see that feature, the percentages indicate the rate of agreement among reviewers. These numbers are not an assessment of effectiveness, not a grade. It is an assessment of reviewers' agreement about whether they notice those features or not. As you look at these numbers, the question you want to ask yourself is, this reader who missed that element, so one of two readers didn't see that element in the draft, was that reader reading too quickly, or is that element too subtle? Similarly, the class averages tells you of all the drafts read by all the reviewers, how many reviewers noticed that thing. The class average tells you what's popular or dominant in the whole set of drafts, so you can decide how much you want to be like everyone else. In the scaled response items, you'll get both a rating and a comment if the reviewer included it. Use this feedback as food for thought. Food for thought about revision is important, but it's actions that matter most, as Dylan Williams reminded us. Eli invites students to take two quick actions as they noodle the feedback they've received. First, writers rate the helpfulness of the comments. In one of our student resources called Rethinking and Revising, we give students a list of criteria or qualities for helpful feedback. And we also encourage them to use that checklist of questions to figure out how many stars to give each comment. Like on Amazon, if everybody gives every product 5 stars, the reputation system is no good to us. So we encourage students to use 3 stars because it is the norm, not because 3 stars is bad. As you read your comments, you want to keep these questions in mind. Does the comment help me understand my writing? Does it measure my progress toward a goal? Does it give me specific advice? Does it show respect for my work and for me in its tone? If it does all of these things extraordinarily, then it's 5 stars. Otherwise, count up the yes answers and rate it. That one decision, how helpful you find a particular comment, flows back to the reviewer and to the instructor. In a low-stakes way, without affecting anyone's grade, reviewers can use the helpfulness rating to say, I'm getting what I need to revise, or I'm not. Instructors can use that information to coach particular reviewers who are struggling to give good feedback. The second decision you make as you debrief through your comments is which comments are you going to add to your revision plan. On your side, you have a button for a comment over on the right that says Add to Revision Plan. When you click it, you choose which writing task this comment applies to, and then a copy of this comment is moved to the plan associated with that writing task. Eli's features help writers work through a decision-making process around each comment. How helpful was this comment to me in guiding my revision, and do I want to add it to my plan? These easy choices help writers spend more time thinking through revision. By giving feedback to other writers and receiving feedback, writers are really looking to the right and looking to the left and making small adjustments in their own performance. But instructors have another way of encouraging students to understand what's happening across the whole class. I'm going to switch from the individual student report back to the aggregate class report by clicking on the Writing Feedback tab at the top. Then I scroll down to the scaled response question where I ask reviewers to nominate a draft for class discussion. We can see the class average is really close to 3, although it's verging on 4. That's good. It lets us know that you are really discriminating in rating these drafts, and that's what we're looking for. And so with confidence, I know that these are the drafts that have something very interesting to say. And I'm going to talk through all 3 of them actually today. And we have these conversations about the models students like and nominate because sometimes we have to adjust the class's expectations for what we're looking for. And so by talking to students about, hey, you guys really like this draft, let me tell you why I like it too. Or let me tell you why I think it needs a little bit more work than you indicated. These are the kinds of conversations that help students read drafts like we do. So I'm going to start with classmate 2, and I shift to that individual student view and then pop open the draft. This is a good moment to stop the video and read the draft before I kind of give you a walkthrough. So this draft opens with a couple of big claims. Peer review is central. Eli Review is the peer learning platform we're going to use. Writing process is the way we're going. And we're also going to learn this method called Describe, Evaluate, Suggest for giving helpful feedback. So the big concepts hit hard and fast at the beginning. And then we make the shift towards explaining why peer review matters. And this draft opens with, I think, some very common negative experiences with peer learning. One is that students have only received praise before, or they haven't gotten enough detail to be convinced to revise. And so that follows with a statement that the class's purpose is to become better writers by becoming better reviewers. I love this statement. It's really key to the work we're doing at Eli Review, and Bill Hart Davidson calls it giver's gain. And the notion is this: when a student can spot a problem in another student's draft and then can offer a suggestion, then they can take that insight to their own draft in a new way. So, being a good reviewer cues you to revising your own work in a very unique way. And so, what we want to do when we teach revision is to know that we begin teaching revision by teaching review. The more we can help students notice problems and notice successes in other writers' work, the more likely those students are to bring that insight to their own work today and in the future. So I really like this notion that becoming a better writer is grounded in doing better work as a reviewer. The next sentence offers proof of that, but the focus of the proof is on revision. So there might need to be something kind of teased out here about the relationship between feedback and revision. The next sentence shifts to talk about, again, the quantity of review and revision that the course will do, and so describing it as formative, timely, and descriptive. So it's more like the information up here. And the wraps up with a reminder that all of this work is going to help writers with their writing goals. The summary statement kind of strikes me in an odd way because we shift from the writing goals back to good bad peer review. So we're not going to do peer editing. And we're not going to do praise. That was the two problems here. We're going to be working on viewing the writer's work from a different perspective and share what that view is. So it seems like this is trying to echo what was before, but I don't feel like it's more clear. So that might be a line that just disappears. Just end it with that paragraph, or maybe this is something that needs to be worked out a little bit more so that we get the proof that feedback leads to better revision and that students will be supported in doing that work. So let me show you another example. I'm going to close that and jump back to the Writing Feedback tab and scroll again to our peer responses and show you Classmate 3. In this draft, we see some of the same moves that we saw in the previous draft. It starts with the heavy hitters. This is what we're doing. You're going to give and receive feedback. It's going to be a structured peer review. There's a distinction between peer review, which focuses on developing ideas, from peer editing, which focuses on grammar. And because of that distinction exists to make sure that we put revising at the center of the drafting process, because strong revisers are also strong writers. So this is a nice logical chain of why the course is doing what it's doing. The next paragraph, it gets at one of the students' fears that they don't have anything to say to a writer who's better than they are, or that is a writer who is so far off the mark that they just don't even know how to respond. And that they're also worried that it's not going to be worth their effort, right? And so those two fears are really good ones that your students are going to have. Then against those two common student fears, the solution is guided practice. The teacher word for it is scaffolding. But I wonder if students won't wonder if there's not some accountability or some point value around becoming a better reviewer. And so this might be a place to insert strategies for giving students literally credit or accountability mechanisms for doing the hard work of becoming a better reviewer. The last line sneaks in Eli review, but notice how that switches from feedback quality towards the revision plan. So that gets tucked in a way that might need to be expanded as well. And so maybe this sentence actually fits better with this next paragraph where students are told they're expected to write targeted drafts and then maybe give feedback here and then revise often in this class. And so Eli becomes just the platform in which all of this activity for moving a draft forward and talking about drafts with peers is happening. So the part I think needs work is in this little part between responding to students' legitimate fears about not doing a good job and not getting good feedback, and why that work matters in the course, and then where the explanation of Eli as a platform fits in this overall scenario. Notice that some of these comments are blue kind of footnotes. Those are where the reviewer highlighted a word and added that comment. And the ones that appear here were unanchored. So the reviewer just added a comment without doing the highlighting step first. So that's what you're seeing here. Let me do this third model that got a perfect score from group members really quickly. So here's the draft. And you'll notice that it opens in a very different way. This one begins with the notion that a good writer is not a good first draft writer. They're good fifth or sixth draft writers, but that's a concept that students really struggle with. The next sentence puts peer review in the context of becoming a better reviewer. So the thing we were talking about with giver's gain and helping students understand that seeing problems and successes in other people's work then lets them turn to their own work wiser about how to achieve a goal. That might need to be added to this part. The last sentence says makes another big claim that is a little different from what's come before, in that the notion is that research shows students learn better from each other than from the teacher. But why is that? Is it because the teachers are talking above students' head and peers are in that zone of proximal development? Is it because peers can offer more feedback than instructors can and more timely feedback? So maybe this claim about why students learn better from each other than from instructors needs a little bit of explanation. The next paragraph tries to make a distinction between bad peer feedback and good peer feedback, which we've heard as peer editing for the grammar stuff, this notion about where commas go, versus the kind of developmental editing that helps writers rethink their ideas and their evidence. And it gives some language to what that good feedback is, and that revision will be the step that follows it. The last paragraph gets back to the course expectations, and it includes, for the first time in the drafts that we've looked at, the points associated with this work. So that's a nice progression of these are the big ideas of why we're doing what we're doing. This is what makes feedback good. This is what makes feedback poor. And then this is how this is going to play out for points in this particular course. So that progression is one you might think about as you revise your writing. Let me summarize where we are. So far, we've processed and debriefed feedback by talking about how the individual report for each writer gives you a sense of what your reviewers think you are doing and how your priorities compare to the rest of the class. We've also looked at some models recommended by the reviewers who read them, and we've talked about how the different approaches might influence the way you revise your work. So now your task as a writer participating in this workshop is to build a revision plan. So I'm going to walk you through that process. Let me show you what a revision plan looks like now. When you go to the dashboard, click on it, and you'll see the instructions that explain how to get comments from the review task to the revision plan. So remember that you have to start in a review task and then work through the comments and choose Add to Revision Plan, and it will get copied to a list. I'm going to switch to the student resources, and I'm going to pull from the user guide and then pick the revision task to walk you through this process. So to build a revision plan, you have to add that comment to a particular writing task, and then you get a note box where you can say how you are going to use that particular feedback in revision. So this is a note for you that I can see as the instructor if you share the plan with me. The next spot is that you also get to drag and drop those comments into a priority list. So you can say, this is the first thing I'm going to do, and this is the fourth thing I'm going to do if you have that many. You also get an additional revision note box, a big box. So in these additional revision notes, this is a space for you to communicate about your overall sense of what needs to change. It's a good place to put any ideas you learned by looking at models or from the explanations in your rating or any overarching reflections you have from the work that you've done this week. Your comment will come directly to me and I'll respond. And my response is going to be focused on coaching you in the thinking you're doing between the draft. So I'm not giving you feedback that's exactly like the feedback you got from peers. That would be a waste of time. Instead, I am commenting on the decisions you've made. I'm going to say, you followed great advice, keep going. Or, I think you ignored some good advice from so and so. Or, I think you followed some bad advice from so and so. Or, nobody told you X, Y, or Z. So, my job as the instructor in coaching this thinking between drafts is to find out the things peers haven't already told you and to help you figure out what to do next before you start down that road of revision. This concludes the video, Debriefing Writing from the Peer Learning Activity. I hope it was helpful for giving you a sense of how you can use Eli's features to make sure that writers have the information they need to make good decisions about revising.